Good morning, everybody. Good morning. You guys still looking for seats down here? Don't be shy. Come on up. We got two right up here. Just come on up. We'll make a deal. Let's make a deal. Come on up. Don't be shy. Here, you want a seat, right? Tell us your name. Everybody, give her a big round of applause here. Brave person. Anyway, great to have all of you here. You know, I was asking all of you backstage if you each knew each other in this world of data and bits and innovating around water, measuring water, running a water system, and you admitted you all did know each other. So if you were getting together for a pizza night together and your spouses or significant others were elsewhere, what would be the thing that would drive you into a 3-hour discussion? What are you guys obsessed with?
Well, I'll start. Innovation. How do you bring innovation to a very old system? And because we have talked a lot about what's needed to overcome some of the challenges that's holding us back from doing all the great things that we know intuitively that can be done, but there are lots of barriers. So what are the things that we need to do to get over those? And that's a very exciting conversation because we energize each other, we can share experiences and stories, so that can take several hours.
Joone, I read you used to be a police officer in Pasadena, right?
Yes.
So why did you leave that world to become kind of a water czarina in Riverside and Laguna, Niguel, as I understand? What is your territory you run?
South Orange County, we serve 6 cities. The communities down there, we serve about 170,000 people, water, wastewater, recycled water service. Loved law enforcement, loved public service, being able to contribute. But wanted to start a family, and it was really difficult to have the schedule that I did. And so from there, I just started looking for other career opportunities and just happened to stumble into water. But it's been a great journey. The common thread, it's always about people. It's always about relationship and public service. So there's a lot more in common than people think.
So let me put Scott on the spot here. Scott, you run an incubator, as I understand, for innovators in the water space, which sounds really cool. If you were to grade Joone's system on how innovative it was on a scale of 1 to 10, where is her, not Joone, but where is the water system that she runs?
You know, it's an A, I'd say, and not necessarily from a technology or innovation standpoint, it's the people. And I think that's really going to be the change for utilities, especially in this state, is there's a silver tsunami in the municipal space. And we're not talking about retirements in 5 years, it's 6, 12 months. So people like Joone that have really put together a young management team, and she pushes them to think innovatively. That's the first step. And you go back to the conversation, what would we talk about at pizza? I think it's what could we do tomorrow? I think all the time we're thinking long term, and that's how water people often think, and that's why I think what draws a lot.
So what could we do tomorrow?
I think on the data space, it's taking information or technology that we have now, even the data we have now, cleaning it up and putting it to use. I think the big challenge with the data piece of water is it's got to be actionable data. It can't just be interesting data. So people that I work with, we look at hundreds of entrepreneurs globally each year developing new businesses in water. A lot of them still have technologies that produce interesting data, and it's cool, but what's Joone going to do with it? What's a farmer going to do with it? So I think our role in the ecosystem is really helping the entrepreneurial community understand the pain points that end users have.
Can you make this, and I want to jump to Emily for a minute, but can you make this more real for us? I mean, what does water innovation look like? Give me some real examples of things that are happening.
Sure. So I think to stick with the data theme, on the municipal space, we see some really interesting companies like Water Smart Software, Drop Counter, which are essentially doing the O-Power for water thing. And
we were talking about O-Power in the back. For those of you who don't know, can you explain O-Power real quickly? It was it's
basically using behavioral economics to drive conservation
on the energy side.
In the energy side, and it's a smiley face. It's a thumbs up, thumbs down. You are better than your neighbor, or not. It's actually an exercise that yields a 5% conservation metric. So during the drought, when you had, as Felicia called Wade, the drought czar, saying, hey, cities, you've got to go save 20, 25% of your water. Well, if there's a piece of software that could get you 5% there, it became very attractive. So that's really been the power for the behavioral economics side on the municipal space. But a lot, as far as sensor technology, we start thinking about quality, I think this is an area where it's ripe for innovation from outside the sector. So you'll see people from biotech and IT coming into water. They see an opportunity. They see a very challenging market, but to bring the know-how, take advantage of the falling costs of sensors, and apply that to water.
Emily, you're in this business doing, as I understand it, biosensing, right? Like arsenic and chromium, these kind of bad things that shouldn't be in water but are in some levels. How bad is the picture out there?
It's a good question, and I think it depends a lot on where you are, but what we're really finding is that a lot of these specific chemical parameters, we don't have a lot of information on them. They're things that get monitored maybe once a quarter, if at all. Sometimes they're not monitored at all, and there's just not a lot of understanding of the quality of the water. We focus a lot sometimes on the, how much water is there, but not always on specific quality parameters, which if the water has, contamination with some kind of heavy metal or pesticide, it's not clean water. And being able to get actionable data about that you can do something with is definitely a big challenge that we've seen, and one of the things that we're trying to solve at FredSense.
So walk us down that. What have you discovered? What's been the most shocking thing you've learned as you've gone into water systems? Have you done Beverly Hills water?
No, we haven't done Beverly Hills. I think one of the interesting bits for us, and starting out as young, naive entrepreneurs, we thought, wow, we have this great technology that can detect all these really bad things in water. Everyone's going to want this. Why wouldn't they? And when we started going out to some of these, some of these water districts and municipalities that had, arsenic was the one we started with, and they had huge arsenic problems, but they didn't want our technology because they knew that they couldn't afford the remediation infrastructure. So why on earth would they want a technology that tells them cheaper and faster that they have a problem that they don't know how to deal with anyways? So we realized that wasn't, that was really shocking to us because we hadn't, being naive, we hadn't realized that, there's so many factors that come at play here, and that we needed to really find areas where, it wasn't just this lack of data, but if we had data, there was something that we could actually do about it, and that was going to be able to make an impact.
Do you work together at all? I mean, were you an incubator in Imagine H2O?
Yes, so we're one of Imagine H2O's current portfolio.
So how many, and do you work with Imagine H2O? Do you take stock of their best people and steal them or something?
We certainly learn from them.
Yeah, but I'm interested in incubators and whether or not they actually, I understand you had about 350 people at a conference recently, and you had different winners. I may have some of these numbers off, but just kind of give us a sense of how dynamic this is, because one of the big things, particularly in California, but you mentioned utilities, is this sector is not looked at as a highly innovative sector. You're the only incubator in water in the state of California. Sure. And I don't know if there are others around in the United States or not, but it raises the interesting question of why things were so frozen, why utilities could continue to run as they were, why there are so many incumbent sort of stranded problems in this for so long. And so I'm just interested in what tensions you're disrupting.
Sure. When we started out in 2009, I'd say the idea was more to have a business plan competition, and over time that's morphed into an accelerator program, and each year we're taking hundreds of startups globally, isolating it down to a group of 10 to 12 companies. And then really help them get to market. So that's really become more of a path to market. But I think that the change in the last few years for us is we probably spend as much time with end users as we do with entrepreneurs. And the challenge for entrepreneurs and end users in this space is, how do you fix that customer question? How can utilities become better customers? And how can an entrepreneur show up at the utility and actually be able to address a problem that they're willing to pay for? So that's really been more of our convening role lately, is to kind of actually provide that path to market that makes sense and is an actual solution that an end user might want.
Joone, I found this great quote from you that I ferociously disagree with, but it's interesting. I've learned that when it comes to water, everyone is right. It's not about proving who's right or wrong, but trying to see where there could be some commonalities and alignments. And I think there was this other line. Finally, one of the things that I do a lot when we talk about water decisions and people get really worked up or angry even, is to remind everyone that no one's going to die. Compared to having to make decisions can result in life and death, this is all workable, so let's all take a collective breath, calm down, and just talk through it. You're such a kumbaya type person. In one of, water and the water wars in California, Mulholland taking water from up north, bringing it down here, looking at the water wars that continue to go on even today, and some of the discussion that we heard earlier. How do you remain so placid in this, and do you not have a sense of the tectonic friction that's going on in the water world right now?
Definitely feel the friction, a lot of times in the middle of that friction and the tension. But I've had the great privilege of working in different communities, Southern California, Northern California, urban, rural, disadvantaged community, public, private systems. And so I've had an opportunity to work with the people that we serve. And as Scott said, it's really about the people and the people that we serve. So I make it a priority for myself and staff to have that connection with the people that we serve. And as you learn, everyone has a reason for why they have their belief. And when they feel very strongly about water, because it's critical to life. And it is such a powerful belief system that you really need to understand where they're coming from. And if you can understand and if you can speak at that level, you strike up that relationship that's based on trust. So while we might not agree, if I can understand and you can understand, then we've gotten past this sort of personality friction to where we can have differences in opinion, but we work together to find middle ground or common solution. And I found that no matter where you live or what background you come from, people are people, and we have so much more in common than we are different.
So let's take the people are good, I get that,
Okay.
but who are the villains in the story?
Okay, I would say those who make it challenging are the people that hold on to status quo, that fear the unknown, that fear the change. They're not comfortable with the unfamiliar, and they stick to the old ways. I think that's where you get the greatest pushback on progressing on any issue. And there's also this emotional historical baggage. And it's really hard to put your feelings aside and not take things personally, but we have to. But that is really the enemy. It's not so much the individual or groups of people, but it's that tendency, our human nature, to hold on to things and to not forget and to be uncomfortable with change. I think that is the element that really gets in the way of progress.
Scott, who are your villains?
Well, I think it's time to change the frame. When I sit down with my 3.5-year-old son and say, we're going to read a scary book, he gets scared. We could read the same book, and I don't set it up as a scary book, and he doesn't get scared. I think we need to...
But maybe you should scare him because there's scary things out there.
Well, we need to be scared about the challenges
Yeah.
here, but I think when we start the debate of the wars in water, and wars will be fought about water, and we don't think about what's possible, we're not going to get anywhere. And I think that we're certainly making progress in climate, but we start thinking about Tesla and solar panels and what's possible, and people want to go into that industry. They see opportunities for that. We need people in water.
Did the
Who's
big,
kinda wants to go work in a sector?
drought help drive interest in what you're doing?
Certainly.
So the drought is a friend.
Yes, the drought has been a good thing
I
for
just want to
what-
note that's a
what we do.
tweetable moment at today's conference.
So, and I also think for our entrepreneurs with the silver tsunami in the municipal
Yeah.
space, that's actually an opportunity.
So explain what I don't understand the silver tsunami. I mean, these are people aging. I mean, are they going to use more? I mean, what does it matter, the silver tsunami? I don't understand the connection to water use.
retirements at municipal water utilities, and no one to fill those jobs.
Oh, I see. So it's a job problem.
It's a job problem. And how can we expect tomorrow's workforce to go to work at a water utility and look at an Atari screen when they can control their nest from their smartphone? And that's where the entrepreneurial opportunity will be. It'll be enterprise software. It'll be helping utilities use artificial intelligence just to mine the data that they do have to improve their operations. So that's, I think, why I get excited about innovation is I think it'll help solve the people component, and I think can help change the frame of what you talk about water.
You know, Emily, what's great about coming to California and spending time here is you can actually have probably a full morning discussion without ever mentioning Washington, D.C., but I'm going to anyway. You know, I'm interested in the degree to which federal guidelines, national level innovation, what comes out of the USDA, the EPA, anyone with jurisdiction in sort of the water and natural resource arena, whether what's happening in Washington today, which I'll just kind of short form and say isn't pretty, how that impacts or not the kind of worlds that you're in, particularly in science in the area you're in, Emily.
Yeah, for sure. That's something that we're interested in, especially seeing how that plays out over the next little bit. I would say.
But how does it impact you?
From our perspective, it hasn't at this
She's
point
Canadian,
had a huge.
so.
Yeah, I'm Canadian, so totally different. Now we do all of our work.
You have a retreat worked out.
Exactly. Exactly. But we do a lot of our work in the U.S. But most of our stuff is more on the local level, to be honest. We see in sensor technology, we see the EPA as being something that's it's a hurdle to be able to get sensor technology adopted from a regulatory perspective. Not lots of field technologies have ever been adopted by the EPA for regulatory purposes. So we know that is a.
But cities, counties, and states can do it without the federal guidelines.
Exactly. So if they're using it for process monitoring, so if they're using it for their own knowledge, which is really what we target, and groups that are not just monitoring for compliance purposes, but have a need to actually understand what their water looks like on a regular basis for them to be able to make changes. And so from that perspective, what's going on a federal level, it kind of dictates what they're interested in and what they're looking at, but it hasn't had a huge impact on necessarily how they work with us in terms of what they're interested in looking at.
Joone, do you have to pay attention to Washington, or can you ignore it?
Oh, we have to pay attention. I mean, there's regulatory requirements, there's funding, there's the trends. I mean, you talk about, there was a great interest from the White House and the previous administration on the data, and we wanted to make sure that was preserved so that we can continue to do the good work that was starting to be cultivated in California, and we still do that. So we have to be aware of the context in which we operate, because even though we serve a specific community, we believe in the broader community.
Does the current administration remain interested in your data?
So far, we've been working with the same staffers. There's been some changes, but we are keeping our efforts in California going and really trying to focus on what we can do here, working with the various state agencies and local agencies. And we hope to get some support from the federal, but it really hasn't been an ongoing relationship. I mean, we come together, we do data challenges, hackathon, those kinds of things, and those are still being planned.
Before I go to the audience and we take the mics out there, I want you to tell Scott, in his big innovative sandbox that he has, as someone who consumes and who sort of looks at bringing and kind of being a front line of bringing innovation into real water provision and water system governance, what are you missing? What do you need him to invent that's not there? What's the aspiration, say? If we locked him up in the cartoon exhibit here for 5 years and he were to come up something, what would you want him to do?
I want him to help us tell the story. A compelling story. We talked about this retirement.
Well, that's more on the Atlantic side.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you
anyway,
too.
No. Yeah, go ahead.
Because there is a lot of retirement. There are a lot of people, I think, that can take that position. But instead of the conventional promotional path in water, I love to see people from outside coming into the water industry with fresh perspective, new ideas. But to attract that level of talent and goodness, we've got to make our industry exciting, a place where people want to come. Not when they say, well, that's just a utility, they don't like innovation. How do we tell an exciting story? What is resonating out there? And how can we draw that into our industry? And what do we need to do? We're figuring out as we go, trying to attract that next layer of leadership. But what is the story that really resonates, and help us create that in a way that's exciting?
So Scott, as you respond, will you please tell Joone what she needs that she doesn't know she needs, in addition to answering?
Oh, boy. Definitely, I'd say the majority of the entrepreneurs that we work with, exception to Emily, it's the storytelling and marketing that they really struggle with. This is not IT, this is not social media, nor is it energy. For the entrepreneurs we work with, they enter in looking at this as a 10-year journey. There'll be maybe less than 200 million of venture capital in water this year. That's done in a day on Sand Hill Road. So we've got to change those stories. We've got to bring talent into the sector on the entrepreneurial side, and we won't do that without some entrepreneurial successes. So I think that's a piece of it. I also think for utilities, maybe this is controversial, but I think in the public's eye and how we view the public agencies, there's something wrong with people making money by providing a service to the utilities. And that, I think, has to change too, where there'll be a willingness to pay for a solution from outside the utility. Oftentimes utilities say, well, we have all that data, we could do it when we want. Well, you're not going to. And here's an entrepreneur that could do it for the fraction of the cost if you did this on your own. So I think it's that open exchange between the end user, in this case the utility, and the entrepreneurial community to really pinpoint where the opportunities are and then tell those stories in a way that move people forward rather than lock them into.
Do you need more private investment in water stuff?
There is more than enough money available for entrepreneurs. I think where we've struggled are with actual promising commercial ideas, and that's really been Imagine H2O's role. This year we'll be on track to, our portfolio and alumni now will represent probably a quarter of all venture deals in water. Although the traditional VCs are not necessarily active in this space,
right.
It's family offices and strategic investors. So large corporates, primarily from outside the US, looking for opportunities to invest here.
Got it, right. Sarah.
Hi, this...
Is your mic on? Or put it real close to you.
Hello?
Yeah, there you go.
Hi, this is more geared towards Emily and Scott. I am from Paramount, California. We have high levels of chromium-6 in the air, and we suspect there might be chromium-6 in the water. What type of testings do you guys have available to find out whether there is chromium-6 in the water?
I didn't invite Emily up. And
Yeah,
is this an easy answer?
This is an easy answer. So at FredSense, we make portable testing units for measuring specific.
Do you have one here you can lend to
I
her?
don't have one
Yeah?
here, no. But we have a test for Chrome-6. It's a little cartridge-based system that you plug into our device. And what we've tried to bring to market is something it provides really good data that's comparable to that which you get from the analytical lab, but it's much cheaper, and it's not something where you have to mix 12 chemicals and then decide what color is. It's as simple as inject the water into the device, and then everything's done inside.
And my second part to the question is for Scott. Let's say we did find that there was chromium-6 in our water. Do you know, or is there anything...
Call Rachel Maddow.
Is there anything available, like filters or some type of systems that would be able to clean or filter the chromium-6 from water?
There is, and I think in all cases in water, although I'm kind of on the front lines of looking for new innovation, we have the technology to treat arsenic.
At large scale?
Large scale. It's going to be the cost and the political will here. Felicia noted how many different utilities there are and how small they are. I think.
So what's this story there? If you go and you get this little machine and you can instantly see the chromium-6 is in the water, and hopefully it's not, but if it is, then if this is made aware to the public, to the utility, isn't there some sort of incumbent responsibility to move? I mean, we know the Flint story, and now there's lots of liability tied up in the Flint story, but don't those disclosures and data drive necessary responses, or you get litigation and whatnot?
Certainly, and that's going to be one of the challenges for the
You have chromium-6 in your you've checked?
We checked.
Okay, good.
But it's interesting to look at, say, the consumer market in China and how they're approaching this. Is when you have that test in the field or your home,
right,
and you realize you have a contaminant, that piece of technology isn't going to give you the hotline to the local utility. It's going to take you to an e-commerce site,
right,
like an Amazon, where you're going to order that filter and it'll be there for you tomorrow.
Okay, enough marketing. Okay, yes. Right here.
Well, Kevin Harbert from
Hi,
BizFed. So, Emily, you mentioned that you approached water companies, and Scott, I think you mentioned filters. So how about a marketing idea of going after homeowners or multifamily, high-density, buildings or developments? Maybe that's one way, and then on a reverse level, if there's a certain concentration, then we could approach our, powers that be to get something going. You can get groundswell that way.
Thank you. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and that's something that we've thought a lot about. And one of the things we started doing was actually working with a company in Mexico that wanted to do just that. There's a lot of distrust in the water in Mexico City, and they wanted to be able to provide solutions for every homeowner to be able to understand if their water is safe to drink and be able to have a lot more confidence in that system. And so we think that's definitely a really interesting angle for this, and something that we hope that in the future, as we have sensors in our refrigerator and we have sensors in virtually every other part of our house, why would we not have sensors in our water tap to be able to know that our water is for sure safe to drink?
Let me ask one last question. We're sitting here talking about, as this gentleman just did, the residential and the kind of human dimension piece of this, and as we heard earlier, and as we're going to be discussing later with the president of the California State Senate, the agricultural water use is sometimes out there as well. And I mean, it's huge when you look at the sort of numbers and you just wonder, okay, we can monitor houses, we can test for chromium at the personal level, but unless you begin to shift the behavior and usage somehow on the ag side, does any of the other stuff on the sort of household consumption really matter in the end? So just quick answers.
I think ag has done a lot. And
What's the biggest thing they've done that you'd give them credit for?
I think they are doing smart irrigation, and they're also turning their farmlands into estuaries, so there's multi-benefit. There's some very exciting things that are out there, and so I do give a lot of credit, and the land's been fallowed. I think we all have to do our part. It's not just urban and ag. We've got to stop defining it that way, because it's not those kinds of issues.
Uh-oh. Emily, if we did define it at least that way for the balance of my question.
Well, I mean, I think I would really just echo what Joone's saying, that it's, you know, it has to come from all different parts in order to really have a solution. I think there's been lots of really good advances in the ag space. We're not really in that space right now, but I think it definitely has to, we have to not be dividing it like that and have everyone really coming in for that.
Mm-hmm. Scott?
You've got to involve the consumer, and I think the more they know about their water consumption and what's in it, they start thinking about what's happening in the other part of the state. And we can't think about water as it's just going to be fixed over there. We all have to be part of this, and I think that's what the drought did, is it did bring people together around what could be a very controversial topic.
Is Imagine H2O online?
Yes, we're online.
Online. What's your web address?
ImagineH2O.org.
You have your best stuff there?
We're structured as a nonprofit organization. We don't just do technology. We actually have a policy program with the Milken Institute, where we're identifying ways where policy can actually lead to the broader adoption of innovation and try to fix some of the consumer or the customer issues within the municipal space in California.
Well, I will say that if you guys do ever have pizza together, it would be more exciting than I thought it might have otherwise been. So, ladies and gentlemen, Scott Bryan with Imagine H2O, Emily Hicks with FredSense Technologies, Joone Lopez with Moulton Niguel Water District. Great to have you all here. Thank you.